Okay, well, I will say that yes, there have been multiple coverages of this story over the decades, and I've been interviewed many dozens of times. But this one was different because they actually listened to what I was saying instead of trying to make my comments fit into a preconceived narrative. I think that they took a much more critical view of the whole thing.
Life a la Latina presenta Socialiciando. Sí, Socialiciando. Con Alicia Civita.
Well, gentlemen, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
How does it feel? I mean, have you seen the series?
Yes. We have seen the first two of the three-part series. The third one had not been finished yet when we reviewed the first two.
I know.
I have seen the third one.
You have?
Yeah. I got a link, and if you ask them for it, they'll give you a link.
Okay.
So I know there have been other productions about it, but time gives a different perspective. And I'm sure every time you see it, different things get remembered, different emotions come up. How was it this time? And how has it been different from before?
Dave, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, I will say that yes, there have been multiple coverages of this story over the decades, and I've been interviewed many dozens of times. But this one was different because they actually listened to what I was saying instead of trying to make my comments fit into a preconceived narrative. I think that they took a much more critical view of the whole thing. And the other thing that was really different was they reconstructed the prison on a soundstage in Burbank. And when we walked in, I'm sure, Clay, you probably had the same reaction. It was like, wow, deja vu. It was perfect. Every detail was just right. So that brought back a lot of memories. Remember, this was some years ago, and yet it only was a week out of our lives. And yet, it was one of the most memorable weeks I think we've had.
Yeah, I would agree also actually about the set. It was breathtakingly identical, with the one exception that it was properly built so you couldn't knock it over, which the original really wasn't.
Right.
The thing that has been hugely different for me is Juliette Eisner herself, who is a real director and had ambitions for this film that she realized that it's way above the cut of a regular TV documentary. It's better thought out, it's much better edited, it's more exciting, it's more amusing. And I wasn't expecting all that. I thought it would be, substantial and factual and better information than people were getting about the prison experiment than before. But I didn't think it would be art. And it is. It's really good.
Yeah, she really took a deep dive with the individuals that were involved. Didn't just gloss over and tell the same story that Zimbardo's been telling all these decades.
What about your own personal stories? Where are they reflected?
Yeah, she definitely, as I said, she took a deep dive in each of the characters, and came out to interview me on a couple of occasions at my home, and I'm sure, Clay, she probably did the same with you, and got all a lot of perspective.
How does that feel, though? I mean, I cannot imagine, and I know that to me, experiences like this and stories like this show how tricky the concept of time is, and how our brain processes time in such a different way. You were saying it was only a week, but it's such a relevant week that I'm sure takes over many other things. And when you go back to that, it cannot be easy. And seeing it must move different parts of you. That's, I'm wondering, how does it feel now?
Well, I have to be honest. I've had so much practice because it has come up in waves. In every decade, there's like, it gets a little renaissance, and then it goes back down, and then it comes up again. And so I am a little blasé, and the big difference is the quality of what's coming out now, both with the film and also the book that came out a little before it, by a French researcher, Thibault Le Texier, who's in the film, and gets a lot of time to explain what he learned when he was able to go in the archive of the experiment. And he was the first one to get permission to do that. So I had read his book, which is really fantastic and is now out in English. And, you know, I had gone through however long it's been, right? 45 years of this story getting churned around, including by Hollywood. And the big shock is for anything that really is high quality to have popped up out of it.
Do you think it's still, I mean, of course it's still relevant, but isn't it painful that it's still so needed to keep telling the story?
Dave, you take a shot.
I will try. Maybe to give you some background, those of us who participated, I can't speak for all of them, but we never thought this would go anywhere. You know, we thought that it would be just buried in some file cabinet, you know, in the psych department at Stanford. So when it actually hit the airways, went viral as things did in 1971 by being picked up by the news media, I think we were all a little bit surprised. My hope was at the time that I was doing the experiment was that maybe what we were doing would have some impact and some effect on the U.S. prison system. I don't know that it has. I think we still got some big problems out there, but probably nothing like they were back in, you know, the early 70s, late 60s, something like that. I think there's been a lot of progress in the penal system. Now, having said that, I am not a student of the prisons in the United States. I don't have any great insight into how they're run, other than, you know, going out and visiting with some people called the Warden Project, where I was asked to come in and talk about my experiences. But other than that, don't quote me on prisons.
Well, Clay, I mean, I see that you're a researcher in the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. Public policy covers prison management. I don't know if you're more familiar with it.
Well, what I would say is the experiment was based on a theory that always gets a chance to get aired again, which is that human beings can be manipulated to the point that if you can just drop them into a sufficiently enclosed environment and then manipulate that, then they will do whatever you want, and they will get unclear about their own identity. The story of the Zimbardo experiment is that he faked that. He was not getting those results, and so he did manipulations and also hid material so that he could continue to tell that story, and he did so throughout his life, throughout his, you know, decades of his career. And that is really worth retelling, because that can be done again. And the theory that people are infinitely malleable, it doesn't mean that they aren't affected by their environment. It's to take it to such an extreme is a real misunderstanding of people, and one that can be cleared up.
Of course. Now, how does this affect your families to go back every time?
Well, remember, I'm 73.
I
So
know, but
my
I mean,
wife is thrilled.
oh, again, here we go.
No, she thinks this is great fun. I have some of my oldest friends are sociologists who themselves have attacked this experiment. And so they think it's great fun. And at this point, they have kids in college, so if they take a psych course, the Zimbardo's experiment is still in there. And so then they know me and they hear what I say. And so, I really don't think that there's any sort of recurring trauma in my circle about this.
What about you, Dave? Do people get excited?
Well, it definitely has affected. I mean, you talk about family members. I'll give you a quick little story about my stepdaughter in her nursing classes at the University of Tampa. And of course, the experiment was covered. And after the class, she came up to the professor and said, that's my stepdad. And the teacher says, "Oh my God, do you know he's a psychopath? Are you safe? Are you safe at home? Do you want me to, help you?" So this is one of those consequences of the way that Zimbardo's been telling this story, and maybe one reason why I'm very happy that another side of the story is coming out. We'll put it that way. My
elder son, who's a political science, just recently graduated, knows the experiment. He was like, "Really? Are you gonna talk to them?" So yeah, you're part of the of the pop culture of America in a way.
Yeah. I had another professor at a local community college that invited me to come speak, and some of the students, she said, were visibly scared when they learned that I was going to come talk to them. So, crazy stuff like that.
Wow. And now, finally, what would you tell that kid that was in the middle of the experiment now, knowing what you know?
Well, personally, I would clap. In my case, I'd clap the kid on the back because I, had the idea of doing a hunger strike, and it was successful in the sense that instead of being there for another 8 or 9 days or whatever it would have been, I was one of the forces that made the experiment stop early. And so, I guess I would say to that kid, keep it up, this is going to work.
Good job. Great thinking. I'm sure it was hard. It was hard.
It's at the time, it was way more than I believe any of us had bargained for. And so, yes, in that sense, it's very humanly revealing.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? What would you tell the kid?
I think I would say, instead of putting on this big act, why don't you step back and see where things develop if you're not forcing the action? Because, I like Clay, I feel one of the ones responsible for having it shut down early, because I, as I've said many times, I was an acting student doing all kinds of improv exercises, and I treated this as simply an improv exercise and tried to create this character of the evil prison guard. So I would have said, let's see what happens if you just stay cool, and see where the experiment would have gone then.
Live and learn, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'm very honored to have talked to you. I'm so glad that your story is going to be told in a way that you guys feel, I think you're proud of it. So it must feel good, and I think it's going to be amazing for all these young kids that are so obsessed with things, this kind of stories. I mean, we're seeing a craze going right now. So I'm happy that they get to see that, because it also it's gonna make them think a lot. So it's wonderful, and thank you for saying yes at that time, because I think it did change society anyway.
Well, that's high praise. Thank you, Alicia.
You
Appreciate
take
it.
care.
I've had conversations about it even before this, so that's why I'm saying it. All right, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.